Welcome to the Rapport Advantage Podcast, transforming the way leaders communicate. Here's your host, human behavior expert and professional speaker, Alex Swire-Clark.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm getting ready to read a list of accolades for the gentleman who sits in front of me on this Zoom call, and he's just going to have to sit there and stare at me with a cheesy grin. The facts are these, people. 2017 NFL Fantasy Expert Accuracy, according to Fantasy Pros. The Fantasy Footballers podcast had 2 of the top 11 and 3 of the top 14 out of 140 fantasy football experts. That's getting it done. But wait. 2018, a year later, Fantasy Footballers had 2 of the top 5 and 3 of the top 10 out of 140 plus fantasy experts in terms of accuracy. These guys get it done that way. Best Football Fantasy Podcast, 2017. Sports podcast, you name it, any kind of fantasy podcast, these guys won that award. And the People's Choice Award, according to Podcast Awards back in 2017. 2018, Best Sports Podcast. Not just fantasy, but sports in general. They also won the People's Choice Award. They've won that award 3 times now, according to Podcast Awards. And 2019, huge accolade, Best Sportscast as voted by iHeartRadio. These guys have a quality production, and they really get it done. Now, the crazy thing is they also have lunacy and fun with their show. There are things like nicknames, Rule 86, Smash Jackson, my personal favorite, The Big Salad, Sean Drone, Chapel Hill, baby, woohoo! Blow, Guns Mahoney, and most recently one of my favorites, Tarak Cohen, the Dinosaur Hunter. I mean, they just have fun all the time with it. They do water bets, singing mailbag introductions. They have a Fantasy Footballers Combine, double stuff Oreos at your draft. They even have a cardboard bear guest host. I mean, these guys get it real. They build a sense of community. It's tremendous. 5,200 Patreon supporters, 129,000 YouTube subscribers, 123,000 Twitter followers, 81,366 podcast subscribers, according to my podcast app, and I'm sure there are more in other lands. The Fantasy Footballers are Mike, the Fantasy Hitman Wright, Jason Moore, and my guest today, the captain of the ship, Andy Holloway. Andy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I enjoy taking the role of Papa Bear on the show, play the dad to these 2 crazy guys, and we have a lot of fun. I appreciate the introduction.
Has the enormity of your success hit you yet?
Yeah, in different ways. You know, I still run into enough people that don't even know what a podcast is. So I'm sure you understand. It's a different space. It's not a space that I expected to, I guess, grow as rapidly as it did. I think we were super fortunate to just find the right mix of the 3 of us that actually like one another and have fun doing what we do, and being in the space when fantasy grew and when podcasting has grown. I mean, that's been so fun for me as an entrepreneur to watch the landscape of digital media and podcasting. And, you mentioned the iHeartRadio Award. Well, that's brand new because podcasting is coming to the forefront, and Spotify and iHeartRadio and startups galore are coming out of the woodwork in support of podcasting and new media. And we certainly look at each other every once in a while and say, how do we get to do this? I don't even know if we can remember anymore getting the opportunity, just having what's happened happen. But we're super thankful. You mentioned all the hilarity on the show. It gives us so much morbid joy to be able to have the accuracy that we've been fortunate enough to have in performing well for fantasy owners, and then to be able to contrast that with the lunacy and stupidity on the show. Because we hope that we give people no reason not to listen to us. Because for years it would have been, oh, these guys are just too goofy. They have too much fun. I need the spreadsheets. I need the documents. And fortunately, I think we've shown some people what we love about fantasy, which is that you can win and you can have fun. And so that's our main goal, and we're enjoying ourselves. I'll tell you that.
So from my perspective, my podcast is all about helping transform the way leaders communicate. And so you kind of give me a perfect segue into one of my main questions, which is we talk about effective communication, and I use the DISC model. There's models out there like Myers-Briggs and all that kind of stuff that talk about human behavior. So I think one of the things, being a longtime listener of the fantasy footballs, I go back to Oreo days and things like that. one of the things I think that makes you guys so successful is the fact that you hit on all of the four main personality types. So we have like high Ds, and high Ds want to win. And so we're always talking about hashtag Foot Clan titles on the show and getting that victory, beating up your fantasy teammates. And then high Is like to have fun. And man, there's bukus of fun on the show all the time with Mike cracking dad jokes and y'all scoring stuff and everything else. We have the high S's who are the supportive type, and you guys have built a tremendously well-connected community. I mean, you provided avenues for people to join leagues that they may not have known. I'm in a league with guys from Canada, Kansas, Maine, I mean, all over the place, and you've got that community going. And then for the high C's, those analytical types, you just mentioned giving them the spreadsheets and the analytics with all of the ultimate draft kits evolution. You've got perception, you've got all of the high accuracy ratings. You really have touched on all of those main styles. Now, was that intentional from, year one, year two, in terms of we got to get the data heads but have fun, or how did you guys go about that?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't as intentional as kind of identifying them in that fashion and attempting to hit each of those points. I mean, I think that there has been the biggest intentionality that we have had has been the community aspect of the show and taking what we felt were the kind of unifying, engaging pieces of fantasy and integrating them to the show. A very conscious effort to make the listener the fourth person at the table with us. Sitting down, we weren't speaking from a pedestal of expertise. No, we were sitting at the dinner table with you, debating and discussing and working through these things, whether we agree, whether we disagree. The community aspect was what attracted us to the fantasy world more than anything else. I mean, we had spent years in a tech startup working together, wasting just way too much of the company's time thinking about fantasy football and annoying our colleagues at lunch. And so that, and we were never playing for money. These leagues that we played in were for the bragging rights, were for the ability to lord over one another in ridiculous ways. So I think from the beginning, it was an extremely conscious effort to stay community focused, to stay family friendly, to let our personalities and the things that we loved about fantasy come to the forefront, and ultimately not try to imitate something that was out there already. We're all hyper competitive. I mean, I won't be able to show it to you here, but we had a shuffleboard game in the office yesterday, and there are some videos going out around the office because of that game. We want to win at all times, but we also have a lot of fun. So it's one of those things where that was conscious from the beginning. We had the ability to be very active in social media and in the ways that we can connect, nowadays. And Mike especially just super passionate about connecting with as many people as possible. And so there wasn't any way of us knowing whether that would relate to everybody out there, and whether that would be what people wanted. We felt like it was. We felt like, man, we need something year round. And there's this gap between, we have these three pillars we built our show on: quality, production value. That was something we invested in very early. And then it would need to be entertaining and it would need to be accurate. So those three pillars were kind of how we built the show, and then just let the chips fall.
The on-air chemistry that you guys have is just so evident. How did you know, or when did you know that there was something special there between the three of you?
Well, it just was steeped in long-term friendships with one another. I don't think we would have known that it would work that well right away. And, in the very, very early days, Mike and I actually spun the show up as a internal podcast for our league, brought Jason in when we faced it publicly. And it was just the right balance and a hard to replicate thing. There's a lot of big media, a lot of other competing shows that are out there. And it's one thing to be able to hire a few people and put them in the same room, but that's just the chemistry piece is a difficult one to try to project, because I think we do. I mean, people want to know all the time. They ask these AMA questions of us of, do you guys have really big business disagreements? Off air, do you argue with one another? What's the biggest? And like, we don't have those, we answer that question like, man, I think we probably have the most arguments in the office around shuffleboard or foosball. Like, it just coming from the same place as dads, as fathers, at the same stage of life with very similar backgrounds. those things I think meant that there would be fewer roadblocks to some of the things that could be problematic with a chemistry, on-air chemistry, working together, business, all of those things. So those were certainly, at least some of the groundwork was set for us to have success. And so other than turning the microphones on and seeing what happened, we didn't know, but we certainly, what you get on the show is what exists in real life. And so thankfully people have connected with that.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so real is that it is real. It's nothing that's concocted or made up. So in terms of the business model, you guys have obviously come a long way since the first days of Patreon, where there's 50 supporters. There's 100, and I think I was like number 123 or something like that. So way back in the day.
We should send those like badges of honor out to our originals. That would be pretty cool.
It's awesome to kind of know that you've been a part of something that's been helped create that success. So can you tell me how the business model changed and what the evolution of that business model was, and when you guys decided to make certain steps or certain pivots?
Coming from we're a seasonal industry, or at least that's, when you enter it, you're looking at a download disparity between July, August, September, October, November. Well, that's completely different than the way the beginning of the year looks. And so our business objective at the beginning was, hey, how do we buy months of survival? How do we make this a sustainable year-round type of business as opposed to struggling for the majority of the year? And so that was kind of one of the things at the forefront of our mind is, in the beginning, we made ad deals that were probably not the best ad deals for us, but guaranteed prepayment, that we could sign a deal in May or June. Patreon and community support represented monthly revenue for the company that we couldn't get just by selling products in August or booking ads, in August and September, which were our peak months. So for a good portion of our startup days, it was a matter of trying to buy months, trying to create strategies that meant, things like pre-sale. I mean, we pre-sold our UDK. Well, it wasn't a coincidence. We started pre-selling it earlier and earlier when we started the business, because it meant that, we know we're going to sell ads at a much higher revenue point in August and September. Well, how do we live? How do we live in February and March as we build this business? So, first couple of years, it was a lot of focus on how do we make it sustainable year round? How do we guarantee revenue levels so that we can all take a check and support our families during those months? As things have evolved, and as podcasting has evolved, that's opened doors for us to have more stability. Podcasting, more and more ad dollars have entered the space, which means that there's more and more competition from ad brokers to have a right to sell into your show and to sell your inventory. And that means that there's things like guarantees on the year, which can be broken up over the course of the year. So that those things have evolved with volume and with the size of the show. And so really it's not a perfect 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but the majority of our revenue is broken up into products, it's broken up into ad sales, and it's broken up into the patronage.
In terms of the inner circle, obviously, you, Mike, and Jason, you do that, you grow it, you get to a point where you need to add support staff or add folks that are outside of your circle. When did you guys make the decision to pull the trigger on, let's say, like a Brooks, who's phenomenal and does so many different things for you behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've had that one a few times. And coming from a startup background where we had worked in a gaming space, employee decisions are very, very difficult because you can't approach them as though it's a rental or a trial. You're taking somebody and you're putting them in a position where, Brooks was somebody who moved across the country for us.
Right.
We're in Phoenix. He was in Michigan. He wanted to come sooner. And we said, we're not taking you sooner because we don't want to bring you out here and send you back in 2 months.
Right.
And there's that whole commitment you're making as an organization, and employee costs are, you can't look at them as temporary. So those were big steps for us, for sure. And we've really taken I guess the right way to put it would be a right timing approach with a lot of our business. We haven't rushed it. We haven't taken funding. We bootstrapped everything we did. We had bad experiences in the past, me being an employee of other companies where they were in very difficult positions because of debt and things like that. And so those were high priorities for us in the beginning, which meant that we realized that things like producing the Ultimate Draft Kit, which was not immediate, that was a year. We didn't do it the first year we did it. We wanted to do that right. So the timing meant we were going to wait and develop it in a way that we thought would be successful. And the same thing with our employee additions. We have incredible people. I spend more time pinching myself over the people we have than I do the success we've had, because we wouldn't have that success without these people. I don't understand how we found them. We have an incredible manager that came out of the music space. When he first thing he ever did for us was book live shows. He said, "Hey, I bet this show will work live. We've got to book you a live show, see what happens." That relationship has evolved. We have an incredible agent that works on ad deals for us and works on partnership deals for us and advocates for us. We have part-time staff and writers that commit so much time and energy and talent to the team. And we sit back and go, man, how do we find these people? Why, we feel very, very lucky to have found them and be blessed to have them. And it gives us just a lot of enjoyment out of what we get to do. So yeah, it was a big step bringing Brooks out here. We took our time, made sure that we could pay him on the regular.
Judges are expensive now. Judges.
Judges. Oh my goodness.
Whew, 6 figures easy, man.
Pulled him right out of Hollywood, all those movies he was making. Yeah, very, very thankful that we can do that, but it took some time.
You guys have another second big national tour coming up very, very soon. Actually, probably by the time this podcast is produced, you're already going to have the Chicago show in the books. The videos of those are awesome. People can get it. The engagement level is super. How do you guys go about strategizing what you do in the studio when it's just the three of you with creating, the energy now needs to go out into the audience? Do you guys talk about that, or how do you put things into those live shows to kind of create that extra engagement besides the singing mailbag by the audience, which is just it's awesome?
Yeah, we do try to be conscious of that. They're not, I would definitely say we don't approach them identical to a regular podcast. We want, there's an element of playing the hits that we think about,
Mm-hmm.
The energy level is so high. We want that to be an especially engaging and entertaining show. But at the same time, the recipe that we've had for 700 plus podcasts, we stick to most of that, and that seems to be the ticket, not reinventing the wheel too much. And people love being a part of that. I mean, that's the cool thing. We were talking to our Foot Clan yesterday on the Footcast, or actually we recorded it this morning, so that probably goes up tomorrow. But just how someone asked, what's a live show like? And it's like, well, it's like a regular show, except for you get to participate, and the energy level's incredible. And we get to meet so many awesome people that hang out to talk with us afterwards. And, the live mailbag's a lot of fun. And so, again, one of those things you just don't know until you try it. You don't know if something like that's going to work in a live environment, but man, people love their football.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And then we got guys from, wearing Dallas jerseys in the middle of, a sea of Minnesota people or whatever else. And it's like, dude, you're playing with your life here, man.
You really are. Oh my gosh. Those are the worst mistakes. Is that I can tell you, that's one thing we are very conscious of now, is if we're going to do a breakout and bust show or a sleeper show, or we're going to pick players out, we better not pick competing divisional players out and bring them up in the middle of the wrong city. So yeah, Philadelphia, they were pretty rough on us if we brought up some other teams. I'll tell you that.
Definitely. Well, I know we weren't supposed to talk a lot of fantasy, but I can't let you go without asking you one question, because I play the game. So
do it.
I'm a three keeper lead, half PPR. I'm keeping Connor, Lindsey, and Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas. I'm picking 7th. Kamara's off the board as a keeper. Devontae Adams is off the board as a keeper. So the run of running backs is going to happen. We know that's going to happen. So assuming that normally happens, I've got a choice of probably going to be Julio or kind of a Joe Mixon pick. So would you, with understanding I have Thomas and then Connor and Lindsey as my two running backs, should I go ahead and scoop Julio and then try and pick up another running back after the turn, or should I get Joe Mixon?
What other running back did you think was going to be on the board there with Julio?
I think Joe Mixon will probably be there. I'm at 7. So
yeah, I think if you had asked me this question about a month ago, I would have probably pushed you towards Mixon a little heavier. But news has been pretty good about Lindsey's health and the fact that they think he'll be ready to go for training camp. I have had some concerns about a little sophomore slump for Lindsey. Royce Freeman maybe getting a little more play than people expect. At the same time, I don't think you're going to sit there and regret taking Julio Jones and pairing him with Michael Thomas. That's a pretty high volume combination. So I think that's the direction I lean. And if you end up needing to pivot elsewhere for running back support of Lindsey, you'll probably be able to do it because your wide receivers are probably on lockdown after those 2 picks, and you can probably probably turn to high value running backs for a long time in the draft before you go after some sleeper wideouts. So that's probably where I lean. Are you leaning Julio?
I am just Julio and Julio's foot are always the.
I know. Well, they there's some buzz and some hype today that they think that contract's going to be good to go before camp. So that'd be the extra push towards Julio too. If that contract gets locked up and they feel confident and
that's right,
he's making more money, that'd feel pretty good. So
that means the foot is A-okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I like it. This has been awesome, Andy. I really appreciate your time. If people want to join the Foot Clan community like me, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Absolutely. Well, I'd encourage you just check out the main website, thefantasyfootballers.com, and then the communities over at jointhefoot.com. Great community of people. And this is the time to get into, like you said, those Foot Clan leagues where you can connect with other great people that are active, that enjoy playing. Nothing worse than being in a fantasy league where 3 or 4 guys don't check their team. So guys or gals. So check it out. Jointhefoot.com, the Foot Clan community. And I appreciate the time today.
Andy, my pleasure. Again, travel safely. Hopefully Mike's going to make it.
Yeah, I know. He'll get back here and he'll get right back on a plane and come to Chicago with us. So
sounds great. Well, good luck on the tour, and I'll be listening, and I know tons of Foot Clan people will be, and hopefully we'll have some new Foot Clan members after this podcast.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks for listening to the Rapport Advantage podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation on Facebook at The Rapport Advantage and follow us on Twitter at Rapport Podcast.